had invited people interested in my campaign to share insights about family policy. And I kind of had my own expectations about where the session would go, but I was actually very pleased and surprised when it took off. The conversation went in some unexpected directions, and that was altogether good. Anyway, for those of you who do not know me, I'm Peter Sonsky. I'm a candidate for the American Solidarity Party's 2024 presidential nomination. I am from the state of Connecticut. That's where I am tonight, and very grateful, as I said, for your participation. I mentioned the session 2 weeks ago on family policy. Tonight we're going to be talking more on the topic of labor and workers, and I'm hopeful for the same type of outcome. Like before, I'm going to keep this informal. I'm going to ask everyone, however, please be respectful of others. This session is being recorded, by the way, for the benefit of people who have conflicts tonight and would like an opportunity to watch it later. So by no means is anyone obliged to talk, and I'm not going to single anyone out who has not either introduced a thought or a topic. So my suggestion might be please use the raise hand utility if you have a point that you want to make or a question that you want to bring up for the group, unless no one else is talking, and you can feel free to chime in. I have some perspective on these issues, but I'm continually impressed with what ASP members bring to the table. And while I have a few observations I'm going to start with, I'm really hoping tonight to do more listening and more note-taking. I've got my yellow pad. So have at it, and I'll just jot down notes for the better part of an hour. So where to start? I think probably the best place is from the 30,000-foot level, and I'm thinking about this from the party's perspective. You know, the politics of labor has shifted dramatically since the 2016 election. The Democrats, the party traditionally the party of labor, they have in many ways become the party of kind of the dependent poor and the college-educated progressives, where the Republicans, on the other hand, the party that has favored, say, business executives and country club members, they've inherited a lot of non-traditional blue-collar workers, including, in fact, many black and Hispanic voters. So what I see is that the Democrats, while they still rely heavily on organized labor support, there's growing evidence of disconnect between labor and the Democrats. And while the Republicans have been the beneficiaries, as I said, with this kind of windfall of blue-collar workers, I hope they're not too giddy, because I see that they're making no effort, and probably will make no effort at developing a pro-worker agenda. So thinking about it again from the party's perspective, I think the American Solidarity Party is poised at an important time for this political cycle in 2024. It's really a time of opportunity. This party, the ASP, has always been interested in both the rights and the plights of workers and their dependents. So for all intents and purposes, I think we're poised for an opportunity to grow. So those are kind of my opening salvo. There's certainly some topics that I can introduce, but I'm very eager to open the floor right away in case anybody has some thoughts that they'd like to begin the discussion with. No one. Okay. Well, let me throw. Oh, go. I'm sorry. Who did I miss?
I'll say one. I didn't really want this to be the first question, but since no one else does, I'll say it. Do you have any thoughts on unions for industries that don't traditionally have unions, like especially white-collar workers?
Well, if you don't mind my asking, what is it that prompts your question? Is it that you feel that there should be more organization among white-collar industries for negotiation at better labor? What prompts the question?
Well, I don't think I'm white collar. I'm working software, so I have a fairly relatively cushy job compared to a lot of people. So I don't think it's as important as blue collar unions, but I've still wondered if there should be more of it sometimes.
Well, certainly the collaborative effort gives a unified voice for labor, and I think that this is really the involvement in labor unions is a tremendous way for workers to become involved both um, in civic life, in politics, and just in advocating for their needs and the needs of others. To be sure, it's more traditional among the blue collar class, but I I think that there's plenty of opportunity among those that are in those non-traditional union classes that could benefit from it. Joseph, thank you for your interest. What do you have to bring to the table, please? Joseph, you're muted.
Actually, a few things I have to bring to the table. So one of my things that I've kind of become a bit passionate about in regards to worker policy is things like kind of how we here in the U.S. We kind of we're not always good about making sure workers I feel have enough paid time off, and that's especially true of things where it's most needed, like with parental leave, with maybe some leave for other types of family emergencies, as well as sick leave, paid sick leave, all of that, and even like things like I think even some other forms of paid time off probably would be in our best interest to explore, because even though it's typical standard for like people to get, I don't know, like 2 weeks off, it's not something that's guaranteed, and unfortunately, and even when it is, a lot of workers are kind of feel exploited, because sometimes they're afraid to take it off out of fear of being, viewed as lazy or something. So thought about that. Also, I wanted to see maybe some thoughts about like shortening the work week, because you've probably heard a lot about how there's been a big movement and even some trials done in a lot of the world, like the EU, Japan, Australia, about like a 4-day work week, and it seems to be some pretty promising results. So I think that it might be worth it in our consideration to at least be to organize like one of those national trials and see how it might work here in the U.S. with our kind of economic culture.
Thanks, Joseph. I tend to agree. I think that it would really just take the courage or the the commitment of a national employer to do something like you described, to undertake any of these improvements. But the 4-day work week is something that I've read about, especially in the EU, and the success that it's enjoyed both among companies that have introduced it as well as the workers. It kind of helps to give people more of that time off on a regular basis. So there's value to that. Does anyone else have any experience with a 4-day work week? I know in my own experience, I've worked for corporations that have kind of a combination of both executive as well as blue collar, and where there is union representation, it usually follows that the white collar employees get the benefit of everything that it's negotiated through the union. So there's a benefit to that, and that goes back to what Joel said at the outset too. If anybody else has any thoughts, feel free just to click on the hand raise. Mr. Garrett, good evening.
Hello. one thing that's hard to overcome is retaliation for employees communicating, right? There's officially a lot of states have put laws against employers retaliating if you share your wages or work to unionize. But in practice, there's a subtle suppression, right? Like it's asked during the interview process. I wonder if there would be a way to add teeth so that employers don't even dare to create the subtle suppression. Because right now, unless you directly retaliate, there's no consequences. You can threaten to retaliate as long as you don't follow through in most states, and you're immune to any consequences. You know, like a former employee couldn't send that as a complaint to like get an employer to shape up right now.
Well, and retaliation can come in many forms.